Hey guys, as we wind down tonight, we find ourselves standing on the ancient stones of a Roman road. Not as a senator, not as a soldier, but as someone far less glorified. You're squinting into the late afternoon sun, your sandals filled with pebbles, your scroll pouch damp from the morning rain. And there are still 32 miles left before you can sleep. The road stretches endlessly, like a punishment disguised as infrastructure. The wind smells faintly of olive oil, sweat, and disappointment. A farmer's cart nearly runs you off the path. You smile politely and limp onward. Tonight, you are a Roman messenger, the foot-powered nervous system of an empire, and frankly, you might not survive this one. So, before you settle in, feel free to give the video a like and hit subscribe if you are truly enjoying the journey. You can also leave a comment. Let me know where you're listening from, what time it is there. It's always a small wonder to see people tuning in from so many corners of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that gentle hum in the background, and together, let's ease into tonight's story. You walk. That's your job. That's your life. You walk until your legs forget they were once part of a person. You walk through rain, through dust, through towns that don't want you, and forests that want you too much. You carry messages. Words scribbled by someone important and paid for by someone richer. And those words weigh more than they should. In the Roman Empire, messengers were everywhere and noticed by no one. Roads spanned continents, sure, but they didn't walk themselves. Someone had to sprint from Gaul to Germania with a warning no one would hear in time. Someone had to slip a wax tablet into a general's hand only to watch him frown and mutter, "Too late." That someone was you. You didn't wear a cape. You wore leather that squeaked when wet and dried, stiff as arrogance. You didn't carry a sword. You carried a bag full of other people's decisions. And sometimes, if you were lucky, a piece of bread hard enough to knock out a goat. You weren't a warrior. You weren't a scholar. You were the road. And the road didn't care. You begin before the sun does. Always. There's no rooster to wake you. Just the knowledge that if you re-not out the door and on the road by first light, someone 3 cities away will be making your lateness their personal scandal. You rise not so much from rest as from resignation. Your feet still ache from yesterday, a deep, bone-bothering sort of ache, like your toes are slowly trying to revolt one by one. Your sandals, which were new last month, now look like they've been chewed by philosophy students. The straps chafe the same 2 spots every morning, and every morning you tell yourself today will be different. It never is. You wrap cloth around the worst blisters, tie them too tight, then walk crooked for the first 2 miles. Tradition, the Roman road looks impressive from a distance. All those neatly fitted stones and straight lines, but underfoot, it's less triumph and more test. Some stones are loose, some are sharp. 1 in every 50 is shaped exactly wrong for your heel. It's as if the empire built its roads specifically to mock the shape of human feet. And yet this road is your life. You know its bends and ruts better than your own face. You know where the moss hides the slipperiest stones, where the shade always falls first, in which roadside shrines have the least judgmental statues. You pass through villages where nobody makes eye contact, not because you're feared. That would be an honor, because you're invisible, a blur of dust and duty. Children whisper that you sleep standing up. Dogs bark as if you owe them money. You don't stop. Not unless something tears, breaks, or bleeds more than usual. You carry a satchel slung across your back. Leather, cracked, and always heavier than it should be. Inside are scrolls, wax tablets, sometimes small sealed pouches of powder that you are not to open. You don't ask questions. You just run the Empire's errands and hope you dainty become one of its unsolved mysteries. Sometimes you travel with a companion, another runner. You think it'll make things easier? It doesn't. They talk. They complain. They have opinions about sandals. And worst of all, they walk at a slightly different pace, which means one of you is always ahead and one of you is always annoyed, usually both. The weather, you've learned, is not your friend. Rain turns the road into a festival of slick betrayal. Sun dries your mouth into something resembling a cracked amphora. Wind fills your ears with dust and other people's secrets. Snow, when it comes, is a cruel joke played by the gods on anyone too poor to stay indoors. You were told the imperial system was efficient. Fast roads, faster messengers, precision and discipline. You imagined yourself moving with purpose, a vital cog in the great machine of Rome. Instead, you move like a limping afterthought, dodging carts, stray goats, the occasional chicken that looks at you like it knows your secrets. Some days, you carry passwords. Little phrases inked in shaky Greek or highborn Latin. Things like the eagle lands only after sunset or 3 olives in a dish means yes. You deliver these cryptic codes to men in cloaks who smell like worry and wine. They nod gravely, then disappear, leaving you wondering if you just helped prevent a coup or scheduled a dinner. Then there are the bandits. You don't carry coin. You don't carry valuables. But bandits, bless them, are optimists. They assume that if you're on the road, you must be worth stopping. They jump from trees, from ditches, from dreams. Some shout, some wave knives. Some just stand in the path like punctuation marks made of menace. You've learned to negotiate with posture. Hands open, scrolls visible, mouth closed. You show them the seal of the empire and hope they can read, or at least pretend they can. Sometimes it works. Sometimes they let you go with just a slap and a warning. Sometimes they take your sandals, and you arrive barefoot with apologies stuck between your teeth. You once outran a wolf. Probably, it might have been a very aggressive dog. But in that moment, it had the eyes of a creature that knew what messenger legs tasted like. You ran faster than you knew you could, faster than the letter in your pouch deserved. The scroll arrived damp and teeth-marked. You said nothing. Food you eat when you can. Dried figs, salted fish, bread hard enough to qualify as a construction material. Once you bit into a hunk of cheese that fought back. Another time you found a plum in your bag and wept. Not from sentiment, from scurvy-induced joy. You drink from whatever source hasn't killed someone recently. Canteens are a luxury. Streams are a gamble. Public fountains are either a miracle or a slow-emotion illness. You've tasted every variety of questionable water the Empire has to offer. You once drank from a bucket labeled horse only. You told yourself it was a suggestion. You walk until your feet swell like overripe grapes. Then you walk further, because the message must arrive. Because someone important, somewhere, is waiting to be slightly disappointed, slightly later than expected. And at the end of the day, when the sky turns bruised and the shadows stretch like gossip, you find a stable or a barn or just a dry bit of grass behind a villa. You collapse. Not sleep, just collapse. Your body folds like a tired scroll. You dream of shoes with padding, of socks, of roads made of clouds and regret. Tomorrow, you do it again, because the Empire never sleeps. And you, inconveniently, don't get to stop. There's a rumor that the Roman Empire built rest stops. You've heard it whispered between bites of fig, spoken by starry-eyed new couriers with unblistered feet, and hope still clinging to their tunics. They say there's a station every 10 miles, one said once, grinning like a man about to discover pillows. You've never seen one. Not a real one. Not one with beds or food that didn't try to run away first. What they call stations are mostly drafty sheds with a leaking roof, horse trough, and a stone bench hard enough to reset your spine. The only thing that ever stops to rest there are flies. When you do pause, it's never for long. The moment you sit, your legs begin negotiating with gravity in a dangerous tone. If we get up again, they seem to say, we're taking the knees with us. So you hesitate. You eat standing up, you drink standing up, you stretch like an amateur contortionist who regrets everything, and then you walk. There's no end for you. Those are for merchants with coin or soldiers with swords, men who carry clout or consequence. You carry neither. What you carry is a scroll with the latest news about wheat quotas, or the slightly less thrilling. Minutes from a provincial governor's meeting on sewer maintenance, so you sleep where you can. Sometimes it's a stable, sometimes it's under a cart. And once it was inside, a half-finished amphora factory where your snoring caused 2 potters to declare it haunted. You apologized. They didn't forgive you. They just added salt to your water and called it a lesson. Privacy, meanwhile, is not part of the job description. You relieve yourself behind shrubs that barely qualify as vegetation, always with one eye open for snakes, goats, and judgment. You change your bandages under the soft gaze of olive trees and the occasional judgmental statue of Mercury. You dream of walls. 4 whole ones, not the 3 1/2 you usually get when squatting behind a bush during a drizzle. You've shared sleep spaces with cows, chickens, two enthusiastic dogs, and once, memorably, a magistrate's runaway son who mistook your satchel for a picnic basket. He talked for 6 hours about poetry and figs. You nodded. Then you stole one of his dates and left at dawn, bathing. Delightful concept, rarely practiced. Occasionally you find a stream and wash enough to recognize yourself in reflective water, but often you're lucky if you can rinse your hands. Your skin is a complex ecosystem of dust, sweat, dried fruit residue, and sandal wax. You smell like a road walked by history and cleaned by disappointment. Your clothes were once white. Technically, now they are a tapestry of stains. Olive oil, wine, horse drool, and the unidentifiable blotch from that one time you slept under a fig tree and forgot that figs fall. There are way stations, sure. Mansionese, they call them. Government-run stops for messengers, soldiers, and high-ranking officials. But here's the catch. You're not always on that list. You show your badge, your credentials, your tired eyes. The man at the door says, "We're full." You glance behind him and see a completely empty room with a single bored chicken. He shrugs. The Empire is efficient. Hospitality is not. When you do get into a mansio, it's underwhelming. The bedding smells like it retired 3 careers ago. The bread is stale enough to etch your initials into it. And the wine tastes like regret filtered through an amphora. Still, you pretend it's comfort. You lay down, close your eyes. You dream of real rest. The kind that ice sentee interrupted by a host yelling at pigs. Sometimes you stay with strangers. Farmers take pity, or get bored, or just want someone to shout at. You sleep near the hearth, next to a child who insists on poking your ear, and a rooster who's forgotten how dawn works. You say thank you. They say nothing. You leave before they ask. Why your satchel smells like secrets and cheese. You've long since given up hope that the imperial support system means anything more than moral support from your own feet. You once tried to report a broken bridge. The official wrote it down carefully. You returned a month later. It was still broken, but now had a sign that said "Mind the gap. Progress." You meet others like you, fellow messengers, runners, bearers of wax and wariness. You exchange knowing glances, a nod, maybe some dried meat if you're generous. Conversations are short. There's nothing to say that hasn't already been muttered into the wind. A few try humor. At least the road is flat today, one says, right before slipping on donkey droppings and swearing in 3 dialects. Another grins and says, "Only 30 more miles," as if enthusiasm makes legs grow. And yet, you keep going. Not because of duty. Not really. But because stopping feels worse. The road pulls you like a rope tied to your ribs. Messages must be delivered. Words must arrive. And if it means you sleep in a pig pen and brush your teeth with twigs, then so be it. You learn tricks. How to rub vinegar on your sandals to keep the leather from cracking. How to beg food without begging. How to find the driest patch of earth under a storm-soaked tree. You become a scholar of discomfort, a philosopher of inconvenience. And through it all, the empire keeps spinning. Senators argue, generals scheme, farmers till, and you. You carry the news, the orders, the secrets, the regrets, all tucked in a leather pouch you haven't washed since Saturnalia. Every time you find a moment of peace, it disappears. A bird shrieks. A goat steps on your foot. Child asks if you're famous. You say no. They say, "You smell famous." You walk away, 'cause that's what you do. You walk. You deliver. Sleep where chickens walk and pigs dream. And you do it all again tomorrow. There is a simple truth they dan T-print on the scrolls you carry. The message matters more than you do. It's not cruel. It's just Roman. You, the messenger, are the string on the imperial package. Important, yes, until you snap. So you walk. Even when your ankle clicks like a senator's disapproval. Even when your stomach sounds like an amphitheater during tax season. Even when the blisters become open letters of protest on your heels. Because the scroll cannot be late. You've tried explaining your condition once. Back spasms, fever, mild existential collapse. The official nodded sympathetically, then handed you another satchel. "This one's urgent," he said, as if that changed the shape of your spine. Sometimes, you wonder what the messages say. Are they declarations of war, marriage proposals? Requests for more wine at a dinner already finished? You'll never know. You're not allowed to peek. You did once, just once, when a seal cracked on its own. Or so you tell yourself. Inside was a single word. Soon. That was 3 years ago. You still don't know what it meant. You still deliver. There's a kind of devotion in your routine that borders on spiritual. You begin to believe in the sacred nature of schedules. Deadlines become your gods. Each milestone reached is a minor prayer fulfilled. Each delivery, a ritual. But rituals don't protect you from weather or from wolves. You've been chased, more times than you'd like to admit. Once by dogs. Once by what may have been a boar. Once by a man with suspiciously shiny teeth who insisted he was just asking for directions while holding a very unconvincing stick. You've dodged falling branches, broken bridges, and once, an entire procession of drunken soldiers reenacting a battle by tripping over each other and shouting incorrect dates. You slipped by unnoticed, your tunic snagged on someone's shield. Your sandals have been repaired with rope, bark, and on one terrible day, wax. You learned quickly that wax melts. Your heel still remembers. And yet through all of it, you never dropped a scroll. Not once. Not when you tripped on a curbstone shaped like betrayal. Not when your satchel strap gave out in front of an entire group of nobles who laughed like bored gods. Not even when you were sick. Not sniffly sick, but shaking, sweating. May dash the dash gods dash take dash me dash now sick. And still marched 17 miles because it absolutely must reach Pompeii before sundown. It didn't. The sun set 10 minutes early that day just to mock you, but you got there. You always get there, or the scroll does. Sometimes you pass your burden to another runner. You don't make eye contact. You just nod. One satchel leaves your shoulder, another takes its place. A breath, a moment. The Empire believes in continuity, not sentiment. You've had fellow messengers vanish, slipped into the woods for a shortcut and never reappeared. Taken by bandits, or the road, or just the quiet horror of a better option. Sometimes you hear their names whispered by roadside tavern keepers. Sometimes not. Once in a dusty alley outside Capua, an old man stopped you and said, "I used to carry the scrolls." His eyes were watery, his knees bent like old hinges. They don't remember your name, only the delay. You nodded. You already knew. Your body has adapted in strange ways. Your shoulders have permanent dents from the satchel. Your calves are taut, but not heroic. Your arms are sun-darkened on only one side. Your nose has developed an instinct for spoiled bread. Your ears twitch at the sound of distant hooves. Not from fear, just the constant gamble of friend or interruption. You eat when the road allows it, not when you're hungry. Hunger is constant, a polite background music to your day. You don't chase satiety anymore, you just chase roots. Thirst is trickier. You once drank water from a well beside a shrine and immediately saw colors that don't exist. That day, you delivered a message to a rock and thanked it for its patience. You were forgiven. The message was also delivered to the correct recipient. Eventually, in your satchel, you sometimes carry more than scrolls. Small coins, discreet rings, a broken seal that someone forgot to replace. You don't ask, but you don't guess. You just carry. You are the Empire's walking shelf. And when you arrive, sweaty and footsore, you present the message like it's a jewel. Sometimes the recipient barely looks up. Sometimes they murmur a distracted thank you. Once a general took the scroll, read it, then looked you dead in the eyes and said, "Ah, wrong city." He handed it back. We walked 20 more miles. Another time a woman opened the scroll, gasped, and burst into tears. You backed away quietly, unsure if your presence counted as rudeness. She called you back, pressed a plum into your hand, and whispered, "Thank you." You still remember that plum? Soft, sweet, probably stolen. You keep walking? Not for plums? Not even for coin? Which is irregular and always claimed by your supervisors? Supervisor for logistical expenses? You walk because that's what you do, because the message must arrive. Even if you don't, and sometimes you won't. Sometimes the storm comes too fast. The bandits get too bold. The fever stays too long. And somewhere along the road, a new courier finds your scroll in the dirt beside your body, still warm from effort. They pick it up. They don't ask your name. They just carry on. Because in Rome, the message must arrive. You were just passing through. You don't get a day off. This is not an exaggeration. It's not a scheduling error. It's policy. Rest in the Roman messaging system is something that happens to statues, not to you. And even statues sometimes get relocated. You imagine a day off sometimes, a full day. One where your sandals remain undisturbed by gravel, and the scroll pouch doesn't creak with every movement like an arthritic ghost. A morning where you wake slowly, stretch luxuriously, and then lie back down. A warm meal, a shaded spot, maybe even a conversation that doesn't begin with, "Where's the next road fork?" But no, that's not your reality. The closest you ever come to a break is when you fall sick enough to faint. Once in southern Etruria, you collapsed under an olive tree mid-sentence. When you woke up, a farmer was pouring vinegar on your forehead and muttering something about the messenger spirits. You were back on your feet by sunset. They sent you off with a fig and a warning to drink fewer ghosts. Instead of days off, you get detours. The route is flooded. Detour bridge collapsed. Detour. Town is on fire. Detour. You're a walking river, and the Empire insists you always find a way downhill. Sometimes the detour is a longer road. Sometimes it's a goat path that wasn't built for human regret. And once, it was a boat. You remember the boat well. Small, wooden, smelled like old fish and older sailors. You had to hold your satchel above your head the entire crossing, because the floor leaked confidence. The captain insisted on singing. He had 2 teeth in one song, and he repeated both. You've never trusted boats since. And yet, there are shorter routes maybe, the ones the veterans whisper about. A hidden trail through a pine grove, a path behind the aqueduct. The old merchant road that was abandoned after too many unpleasant surprises. You take them when desperation outweighs self-preservation. Sometimes it pays off. You arrive early. You catch a glimpse of a town bathed in evening light. A loaf of bread still warm from a friendly baker. A smile from a girl who doesn't know you're just passing through. These are not miracles, but they are. ... close enough. Other times the shortcut was clearly designed by someone who hated messengers. You find yourself knee-deep in mud, arguing with a goose who refuses to yield the path. You trip on a root and land in what you hope is merely compost. You meet a man who insists that the trail is cursed, and then asks if you've seen his lost cousin, who went looking for the same shortcut last spring. You lie and say no. You walk faster. The road plays games with you. 1 hill becomes 2. 1 hour becomes 4. The milestone markers lie, or worse, taunt. The 12th miles to Rome, they say cheerfully, knowing you passed one that said X miles to Rome nearly an hour ago. You begin to suspect time bends in the presence of leg cramps. Food becomes a numbers game. You ration your dried beans with all the precision of a general planning a siege. You nibble on salted olives one at a time, chewing each as if it were an entire course. You develop theories about which wild berries are safe and which are merely optimistic poison. You test carefully. You burp regretfully. Sleep is even trickier. You once tried sleeping upright, leaning against a tree. You woke up flat on the ground with ants holding a summit on your elbow. Another time, you dozed in a stable and woke up sharing straw with a goat who looked like it had opinions about your hygiene. It was not impressed. And yet you keep going. Not because the job rewards you. It doesn't. Not because the journey is beautiful. It might be, but you don't have time to look. It's not even because you're proud. No one has ever clapped for a Roman messenger. Not once. You keep going because the machine requires motion. The gears turn. The empire breathes. And you are the exhale. Sometimes the only reward is a moment. One cool morning, you passed through a vineyard as the mist was rising. You stopped just briefly. The air smelled of grapes and earth and the rare silence that comes before a town wakes. No orders, no yelling, just the world momentarily pausing with you. It lasted less than a minute. You remember that minute more vividly than your last birthday. The job does things to your memory. Days blur. Towns blend. People become categories. Nodders, scoffers, door slammers, scroll stampers. You forget names, but remember pathways. The exact curve of a shady bend near Narbo. The echo under the archway outside Ravenna. The tavern in Brundisium, with soup that burned your tongue but healed your soul. And if you're lucky, truly lucky, once in a while someone will offer you more than a nod. They'll invite you inside, feed you, now lavishly but warmly. You'll sit at their table like a person, not a pair of walking legs. You'll laugh. You'll forget for an hour what it feels like to always be moving. Then night falls, and you leave. Quietly, always, because rest is never real. It's just a moment between steps. The message waits. The road continues. And so do you. You arrive. That's the first miracle. The second is that your knees still bend, though not without protest. Your feet by now feel like bags of wet sand stitched together with regret. You reach the gates of the city, squinting at marble columns that shimmer in the sun like they know they're better than you. You've come 93 miles in 4 days, maybe 5. It's hard to say. You stopped counting when your left sandal gave up and declared early retirement in the middle of a goat trail. The guards at the city gate wave you through. They don't salute. They don't ask questions. You're a messenger, and messengers don't start trouble. They simply carry it. You limp through the forum, not proudly, not dramatically, just limping the way a bucket leaks. Nobody notices you, or if they do, they notice only the dust, the limp, the smell, and mentally classify you as background citizen number 14. You are not part of the spectacle. You are the one who delivers the invitation to it. Eventually you find your destination, a villa, of course. There are always villas. This one has high walls, iron gates, and the sort of overgrown garden that suggests wealth with bad taste. A servant meets you, doesn't greet you, just waits for the scroll. You hand it over. He takes it with 2 fingers, like it's slightly offensive. It probably is. You haven't washed your hands since that encounter with the vinegar farmer and the phantom goose. He disappears inside. You wait. A moment passes. Then another. You shift your weight, try not to wince audibly. You study a cracked tile by your foot. Begin to wonder if you're supposed to leave. Ain't. Then the servant returns, hands you a small bronze coin. A tip, maybe. Or an insult in metallic form. Hard to tell. You pocket it anyway. Wait, he says, and you freeze. Another message, of course. The scroll is sealed in wax, still warm. He passes it to you with the reverence usually reserved for pickled fish. And just like that, your break is over. You turn around, no food, no bed, no thanks. The road calls. You take 3 steps before realizing your left foot is bleeding again. The bandage has slipped. You sigh, adjust it using a patch torn from your tunic, and begin walking. 1 step, then another, then another. This is how it always ends, with the beginning of something else. You tell yourself you'll rest soon, maybe in the next town. Maybe when your feet finally revolt and force you into a ditch. Maybe when the gods pause long enough to notice you. But in truth, rest is an idea you carry like a spare scroll. Nice to think about, dangerous to rely on. The city fades behind you. Noise turns to wind. Columns turn to fields. And you return to the company of crows, dirt, and the occasional confused donkey. Walk past milestones that lie like optimistic toddlers. 10 miles to the next post. In reality, it's 13, with 3 of them uphill and 1 across a creek that resents the bridge it was given. Sometimes you wonder what would happen if you just stopped, sat down in the grass, let the scroll roll away on a breeze, disappeared. But then you remember there would be another you, another runner, another messenger to pick it up. The Empire doesn't wait. It simply replaces so you keep walking, because at least this message, this one will arrive with your hands on it. You think back to the first message you ever carried. Short tablet, short trip. You were excited, you believed in speed. In glory, in being noticed. You arrived early. No one clapped, no one even looked up. They took the tablet, nodded, and turned away. That was when you realized glory is for the speech makers. You're the one who hands them their speeches. Your body has memorized the rhythm of the road. Each stride calibrated, each breath a chant. You know which parts of your shoulder ache first, which toe will blister again, which tree you'll pass just before noon. You live in that rhythm now. It's not a cage, it's a metronome. Every once in a while, someone calls you important, usually an official trying to sound generous. You smile politely. Then you carry his message to someone who'll forget your face before you leave the room. You've never had a feast, you've never had a triumph, but you've eaten bread under a lavender sky, heard birds singing lies about the weather, and felt the sun dry your tunic just in time to get caught in another storm. You've seen things no senator has. A mother's quiet thanks, whispered from a threshold as you pass. A child handing you a fig, as if it were treasure. A dying man asking if the scroll you carried was for him. It wasn't. You lied and said yes. He smiled and closed his eyes. So yes, the road is hard. The sandals are worse. The scrolls, way more than they should. But there's a strange kind of dignity in being the feet of an empire. You don't command armies. You don't write laws. You don't build temples. You carry. And when this scroll reaches its end, another will begin, because Rome never stops. And neither do you. They called him Marcus the Silent. You never met him, of course. He disappeared long before your first scroll. But in every tavern where couriers gather, over cracked mugs and half-lies, his name is spoken. Softly, reverently, and always with a little unease. Not because he was cruel, or famous, or cursed, but because Marcus never said a word. And yet, somehow, he always knew where to go. They say he ran the longest routes, but he once delivered a letter from Mediolanum to Antioch in less than 3 weeks, during a sandstorm. That he crossed the Alps alone in winter, and arrived with dry scrolls, and 2 wolves following him out of respect. That he didn't just follow the imperial roads, he corrected them. You've seen his name once. Etched faintly into a stone milestone just outside Capua. Marcus, still running. The rest was weathered away. You didn't know whether to laugh or be nervous. The map says he vanished near the Umbrian hills. No one knows why or how. He simply didn't arrive. Message he carried, never found. The satchel, never recovered. Only stories remained. Stories and something else. A route. A crooked one. You received the copy 2 days ago, passed from the hands of a senior courier who looked like he hadn't blinked in years, called it Marcus's Trace. Hand-drawn, worn at the folds, marked with smudged ink and questionable advice. Shortcut, 1 part reads, followed by avoid after rain. Stream walk across quickly, another warns. The asterisks were underlined, twice. It doesn't match any official map. In fact, most supervisors say the route is nonsense, a fabrication. Scribbled fantasy passed from runner to runner like a talisman. But here you are, holding it anyway, because the roads you know are either flooded, bandit-tridden, or officially closed for maintenance, which is imperial speak for we forgot this road existed. So, Marcus's route it is. You follow the first turn. It leads not east, not west, but in a wide, stubborn arc. Through a grove of ancient trees that seem to lean in, whispering doubts. Your sandals already regret everything. There's no milestone. There's no marker. Just a faint line in the grass, like a path that changed its mind. Still, you walk. The path dips, rises, curves again, always slightly off from where logic says it should go. A rabbit startles ahead. A bird calls out overhead as if warning you that this isn't part of the script. By midday, the sun feels unsure of itself. The shadows are wrong, longer than they should be, bending backwards as though the light is trying to turn around. You begin to wonder if you're lost. Then you find it. A flat stone wedged into the earth, carved with an odd sigil in 1 word. Silence. Oh. You sit. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because something about the stone asks you to. Around you, the wind hushes. Even your own breath seems louder than it should be. You eat a fig, slowly, then rise. The road, if you can call it that, continues. You cross a creek. The stones are slippery. You fall, not dramatically, just enough to soak your scroll pouch and your dignity. You curse loudly and feel for a brief moment like the forest is judging you. You keep walking. That night, you sleep near a gnarled olive tree that hums when the wind passes through it. You dream of someone running just ahead of you, never looking back, never stopping. You wake up with leaves in your mouth and an itch you can't locate. By the second day, Marcus's route grows stranger. Paths disappear and reappear like shy ghosts. You pass a broken wagon wheel embedded in a hill, a child's sandal hanging from a branch, and a shrine made entirely of bones. Animal, probably. The map leads you through a valley where the silence is too clean, where your own footfalls feel like an intrusion. You try to hum to break the spell, but your throat goes dry halfway through. You cough, Squirrel scurries away, unimpressed. Still, the path goes on. You wonder how Marcus found it, or if he made it. Carved it into the earth by sheer repetition, a messenger's myth written not in ink, but in footsteps and sore muscles. You trip on a root that wasn't there a second ago. You swear it wasn't. Then, just as the sun begins to lose interest in the horizon, you see something. A small flat slab built into the hillside, covered in moss. You clear it with your sleeve. A carving appears. It's not a name, it's a map. Not of cities, not of roads, but of this route. Twisting, winding, improbable. At the center, a circle. Below it, the same word again. Silence. You sit again. Not because you're tired. It's time because you feel like you've reached something, not the end. But maybe an answer. You don't know what Marcus was running from. Maybe no one does. But his path. This crooked, broken, wildly inefficient trail brought you somewhere you didn't expect. Somewhere quiet. Off the Empire's main grid. Off the maps. Off the expectations. For a moment, you don't feel like a cog. You feel like a person. And then, of course, the wind shifts. A new scroll burns in your pouch. Your knees ache. The shadows lengthen like old debts, so you rise and walk. Because Marcus may have vanished. But the message still needs delivering. The morning fog greets you like a suspicious relative. Cold, damp. And pretending it doesn't recognize you, you wake with your cloak half draped over a bush and a beetle attempting to claim your sandal as real estate. You're not sure how. Far you've come. Marcus's route doesn't count distance in miles. It counts in oddities. Today the path forks 3 ways. No signs, no markers. No conveniently placed statues pointing heroically in the right direction. Just 3 dirt tracks. It's disappearing into a different flavor of uncertainty. Left a narrow trail through tall grass, humming with insects and probably regret. Center, a shallow descent into what looks like a dry riverbed. Dry for now, right? A slope of loose stones, winding upward towards something that might be a hill or might be a metaphor. You consult the map. Marcus's handwriting is indecisive here. The ink blots into the page as though the pen itself hesitated. There's a vague spiral sketched at the junction, and next to it, minuscule lettering. Choose none twice. Helpful. You sit for a moment on a rock that tries to collapse under your weight. Your knees creak a small sermon. You eat a dried apricot that tastes like ambition gone sour. Then you rise and choose the center path, not because it looks safest, because it doesn't pretend to be. The riverbed is silent. Too silent. Even your footsteps feel like they're waiting to be told if they're allowed. The pebbles. Underfoot whisper against each other like old senators plotting in the dark. After half an hour, the first warning arrives. A small wooden marker stuck into the soil at an angle, as if whoever placed it didn't want to commit. On it, a symbol. A foot stepping on a snake? Beneath that, a single word carved deep. Remember, you don't. Not what you're supposed to remember. Not when, not who. But the word sits in your stomach like a swallowed rock. You keep walking. Around the next bend, the path widens into a low grove where trees lean over you like disapproving uncles. Here, the second warning waits. A rope hanging from a branch. Frayed at the end. No body. No story. Hey! Just the quiet presence of potential. You stop. You look around. Pretend you're not checking for ghosts. Then you move on. Soon after, you come to a small pile of stones stacked deliberately at the base of a sycamore.
But
It's a message, but not in words. A courier's sign, maybe. Still here, it might say. Or, more likely, don't. You. Ignore it. You've ignored worse. The riverbed ends, and the land begins to rise again. The sun pushes through the trees in streaks, warming nothing. A wind picks up, then changes its mind and leaves. You walk slower now, not from caution, but because your feet are filing formal complaints with your bones. Then, just ahead, another crossroads. Not 3 this time, just 2. But that doesn't make it easier. One path is bright, a dappled sunlight. A gentle incline, the faint scent of rosemary in the air. The other is darker, a tunnel of gnarled trees, the sort of place dreams go to get lost. Naturally, Marcus's map says nothing. just a faint X between them and a note. Ask the name. You whisper aloud, uncertain. Marcus. The trees rustle. Unimpressed? You try again. Quieter this time, Marcus. Still nothing. Then a voice, faint, female, behind you, not speaking words exactly. More like the shape of a name, whispered in a breath that doesn't stir the leaves. You turn, nothing. No one, not even the beetle from this morning. The hair on your arms lifts, not from fear, well, mostly not. From the undeniable sensation that this road remembers you, so you choose the darker path. Because if there's anything Marcus's story has taught you, it's that ease is a distraction. The path curves downward, roots like fingers across the trail. You step carefully, once you stumble. Not from clumsiness, but from the unmistakable feeling that the ground moved. The trees close in, casting shadows that don't seem to follow the sun. You hear your own breath short, uneven, and then something else. A whisper, not behind, not ahead, but inside. A name, not yours, not Marcus's. Someone else. Someone you forgot. A friend. A rival? A courier who ran beside you long ago, before they vanished on a detour no one talks about? Their name tastes familiar, like a song you heard once in childhood but can't quite hum. You stop, not because of fear, because of recognition. And they're carved into the bark of an old oak. A message. It's not in Latin, not Greek, but courier script. The kind only runners know. 4 strokes, 2 spirals, broken line, translation, turn back if you still care, you stare at it. For too long, then without thinking you press your palm to it. The tree is cold, unmoved. But you feel something anyway. Not warmth, not understanding, just acknowledgement. You move on. The forest begins to thin. Light returns in patches, like a bargain slowly being honored. The ground firms beneath your feet. The air smells less like memory, more like distance, and up ahead, yes, familiar mark. The satchel symbol, cut into a stone post, right where Marcus's map said it would be. You're still on the path. You made it. For now, asterisk the path descends gently now, as if it's tired, too, after the forest and its strange grammar of silence. The open clearing feels like exhaling after holding your breath for 3 hours. Your steps grow less defensive. You stop listening for whispers and tree bark. The wind returns to behaving like wind, not a messenger for voices you didn't ask to meet. And then, out of nowhere, you see it. A villa not in ruins, not alive either. It sits low in the clearing as if ashamed of having lasted this long. Ivy creeps across the roof tiles like old regrets. The columns lean ever so slightly like men waiting for someone else to speak first. The windows are shuttered, yet one swings loosely in the breeze, tapping against the wall in a rhythm that doesn't feel accidental. Marcus's map makes no mention of it. Of course, you approach slowly. Way you'd approach a sleeping animal you hope is already dead. The path to the front door is lined with flat stones, each carved with a symbol. Courier signs, faint but there. Pause, listen, proceed with care. No one answers your knock, which isn't surprising. The door creaks open with the sound of aged leather being stretched over memory. Inside, the air is cool. It's dusty, yes, but not thick with abandonment. As if someone left just recently, or never really left at all. The hearth is cold. A pot rests on a tripod, empty but clean. The chairs are simple. One is overturned. You don't pick it up. You feel like you're being watched, not by eyes, but by intent. You take a few cautious steps. Your sandals echo. The scroll pouch on your hip shifts like it's nervous. Then you see it. On the low table, a scroll, unsealed, yellowed, the ribbon beside it curled in the shape of inattention. You don't touch it at first. There's a smell here, not rot, not mold. Something older, like dried wax and pine resin and the faint, bitter scent of long-dead decision-making. You finally pick it up. The handwriting is familiar. The kind you've seen before in imperial memos. Careful, sharp, impersonal. The date, 32 years ago. You blink. The ink is still legible. Barely it's addressed to a name. don't recognize. Lucius Q. Herennius, a name too long to survive. The contents? A message of reassignment. Polite note to say, your services are no longer required. Report to Carthage for new duty. You stare at it. A breath caught somewhere in the middle of time. It was never delivered. Marcus was supposed to carry this, or maybe he did, and simply never gave it to the recipient. Maybe the recipient was already gone, or already something else. Or perhaps Marcus arrived, saw the state of the place, and left the scroll on the table like a priest offering last rites to an empty room. You turn the parchment over, a second note, scribbled hastily. Not in the imperial hand. Something raw. Uneven, probably Marcus told 2 words. Too late, you sit. Not for rest. Not this time, but for the weight of it. The job is simple. Deliver the message. That's what you're told. That's what you repeat. But now you're holding proof that sometimes, no matter how fast your feet move, how many paths you carve, through uncooperative forests, the message arrives after everything else is gone. You look around the villa again. There are signs of life once. A wine cup with a crack down the side. A tunic folded on a shelf. A child's drawing etched into the wall. 2 stick figures holding hands beside what might be a goat or a triumphal arch. You imagine Lucius? A man stationed here, waiting, or pretending not to. Days passing like pebbles down a dry creek. No word, no scroll, no change, until waiting became habit. Then silence. You tuck the scroll into your satchel, not out of duty, but because you don't want it to remain here, forgotten again. Maybe it can still arrive somewhere. Maybe someone still needs to know he was reassigned. You step outside. The wind lifts a bit gently, like it's carrying your breath away to somewhere safer. You feel the route again, faint but ahead. A ridge, path. You follow. For a moment, you wonder if Marcus sat here too, on this same stone, breathing the same air. Wondered the same things? Felt the same question take root? What if the message is no longer needed? But Rome doesn't ask that. Rome only asks, did it arrive? Because someone somewhere still believes the message matters, even if it's late, even if it whispers instead of declares, even if it's only heard by the last courier. Standing in a villa with too many shadows, you pass the last stone in the clearing, another courier symbol. This one means continue, though. None follow. You do. You leave the villa behind, but it doesn't leave you. It clings, not in a physical way, but the way certain places refuse to stay put in memory. You walk, and yet you keep seeing that empty cup, that old tunic, the faint outline of 2 stick. Figures in the goat that might have been ambition. The air smells different now. Not quite sweet, not quite sour, just aware. Marcus's map is clearer now. No scribbles, no warnings. Just one thick line. The only time he used it, stretching, toward a symbol you don't recognize. A spiral surrounded by dots. It looks like a mistake, or a constellation, or both. The road becomes rougher, but also more intentional. The stones underfoot are older than the ones on official roads, shaped by time instead of planners. They don't try to help you. They don't try to hurt you. They just are. And then you see the first stone. Not a milestone. A message, carved into the face of a large flat rock waist high, tilted toward the path like a listener mid-thought. In courier script, the private shorthand known only to messengers are 2 words. Don't hurry. You blink, you've never been told that before? Not by a superior, not by a map, certainly not by a stone. It doesn't make sense. And then again, you move on, slower now. The path curves through a low ridge where moss grows in the shape of question marks. The air grows cooler, not cold, exactly, but precise. Like it's measuring you as you pass. You reach another stone. This one says you are here, not a location. A moment. You laugh once, softly. A tired exhale, dressed as amusement. Then the 3rd stone appears, covered in moss. But the courier. Marks peek through like old friends at a crowded market. You can turn back, but you won't. It's not a command, it's a truth. and somehow it feels kind. You keep going. Around the next bend is what Marcus's map calls simply the circle. The path widens into a stone ring, just under 10 paces across, set into the earth like someone once tried to trap the sun and gave up halfway. In its center, another stone, tall, upright, blank, until you walk closer. Then you see it, faint letters. Not courier script this time, but Latin, the kind used for contracts, for warnings, for graves. You read it twice, because you don't believe it the first time. Marcus T. Silence. Cognitor nulli. Servus viae non moritur. Marcus the Silent. Known to no one. Servant of the road. He does not die. You stare at it. Not in fear, but in confusion. Respect. Something between the two. Braided like an old rope. The stone isn't a tomb. It's a declaration, Marcus. It seems didn't vanish. Not exactly, he became something else. Or perhaps the road did. You sit at the edge of the circle. The stone feels warm from the sun, but the warmth doesn't explain why your spine straightens. Why your hands rest neatly in your lap. Why you suddenly feel, just for a moment, like a proper part of something ancient. This is the place the maps forget. Not because it isn't real, but because it refuses to be included. A courier's place. A message that wasn't written down. Pause. Recorded only in footsteps. You take out your own map. The official one. It's the one issued to every courier, showing the Empire's veins in fine ink and imperial self-confidence. It does not include this circle. You consider adding it. Then you fold the map and put it away. Some places aren't meant to be known. You rise before you leave the circle. You notice something carved into the back of the central stone. Smaller text, almost hidden. Courier script again. If the message waits too long, it becomes memory. You don't write that down either. You let it settle into you like dust in a satchel. The path resumes, narrow but steady. You follow it. Without checking the map again, your legs hurt less. It's not because they're better, but because the road no longer demands the same kind of sacrifice. Or maybe it still does, but you finally learned how to give it without resentment. The sun begins to dip. Somewhere in the trees, a bird sings the same 3 notes over and over, as if repeating them will help it remember something important. You. Walk on, not hurried, not lost, just moving. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. You don't remember the moment the forest ends and the Empire begins. It's not a clean cut, more like a slow leak. The kind where your surroundings begin to change one tree at a time, like a merchant trying to smuggle civilization past you in small pieces. Eventually, the path beneath your feet stops mumbling and starts barking orders. That's when you know you're back on Roman road. Your legs do not rejoice. Your legs do not even acknowledge this shift. They continue marching forward, powered not by strength, but by a very specific form of grudge. You're not walking anymore. You're gliding on muscle memory and spite. The silence, Marcus's silence, comes with you. It doesn't ask. It simply stays. It's like a smell after rain, or the memory of an embarrassing dream you can't unlive. The map which you stopped. Trusting several minor breakdowns ago, claims the next town is just 6 miles ahead. Which is helpful, except your knees now measure distance in terms of betrayal. By that math, you've already walked for eternities today. You pass a milestone. One of the official ones, the kind made of arrogance and marble. Via Aurelia. Distance to Rome. 121 miles. The stone looks proud of itself. You do not respond. You've learned that talking to milestones only encourages them. Soon, the road begins to smell like people again. A mixture of ox dung, desperation, cheap wine, and hopes pinned on tomorrow's market. You recognize it immediately. It's the scent of somewhere pretending it's important. A guard waves you in at the town gate. He doesn't stop you, doesn't speak. He doesn't even look directly at you. His posture says, "Not my problem." Your posture replies, "It never is." Inside the walls, life is occurring loudly. Someone is arguing about cheese prices with the intensity of a murder trial. A potter throws clay at a wheel like it insulted his mother. Or children are reenacting the Battle of Actium using rocks, and a dog who seems deeply unqualified for naval warfare. You limp through unnoticed. A smear of dust and duty. Trailing scrolls in silence like a misplaced thought. The building you're looking for is always the same. Beige walls, unswept steps, a door that sticks. The official residence of someone who thinks ordering things is the same as doing them. You knock, you wait. You consider screaming. Eventually the door opens. Behind it, a man dressed like he owns 3 libraries and hasn't visited any of them. He eyes your satchel. You hand him the scroll. He breaks. The seal with the ceremonial disinterest of a man opening his 4th disappointment of the day. His eyes move across the page. His eyebrows rise, then lower, and vanish into apathy. He says, "Ah," then pauses. You're late. You are not. But the room has already decided you are. You stand there, blinking like a tired mule who's just been accused of tax fraud. He offers no thanks, no coin, not even the hollow praise bureaucrats usually use to simulate gratitude. Just a dismissive nod and a hand wave that suggests you evaporate. You do. Outside, you find a fountain. It's broken in the way only public infrastructure can be still running, but slightly wrong. The water burbles like a throat clearing before a difficult conversation. You sit on its edge and remove your sandals. They sigh louder. Somewhere, a pigeon watches judgmentally. Your feet look like geological formations. Each toe tells a different chapter of suffering. Your heel is a history lesson no one asked for. One of your toenails has decided to declare independence. You lean back and wonder, is this what retirement feels like? Right. Probably, except with fewer olives and more pigeons. Then you feel it, that familiar bulge in your pouch. New scroll, still warm. From the seal, fresh wax. It's fresh regret. You consider ignoring it. Briefly, then remember you've made worse decisions for worse reasons, including eating that river fig, so you rise. You don't stand. You rise like a ruined temple someone is trying to prop back up using twine and faith. You pass a fruit vendor. He gives you a look. Not hostile, just the look people give when they know what you are. He points at your legs. Long route? He asks, you nod. He tosses you a fig. Not a question, not a gesture. A transaction in empathy. No charge. He says, just tell the road I'm still waiting. You don't ask what he means. Bite the fig, it's perfect. Sweet, sticky, slightly overripe. The taste of something that tried very hard to be beautiful and almost got there. You chew, you swallow. The sun hangs low now, not setting. Just hovering awkwardly like someone at a party who doesn't know whether to leave or stay. For one more song, the road ahead curves. You know it doesn't lead to rest, it leads to more walking, more scrolls. More people who confuse your silence for submission. You think of Marcus, of the shrine, the circle, the strange messages carved in stone. You think of his note. If the message waits too long, it becomes memory. Then you realize, maybe, you're already part of that memory. Maybe every step you take is a repetition. A verse in a poem that never ends, because Rome never does. You walk, not for coin, not for rank, not even for purpose anymore. You walk because the message moves. And so must you. And behind you, the silence follows. Like a second shadow. One that listens. Asterisk. Tea begins, as these things often do, with a man in sandals discovering something he was not supposed to. You were supposed to deliver a scroll. That was all. Standard issue. Addressed to a man with a name long enough to need a footnote. Retired. Centurion turned tax assessor. Living in a villa rustica tucked between olive groves and what appears to be the empire's leading supplier of mildly cursed sheep, the route was uneventful. Which, by Roman standards, means you were only almost trampled once, bitten twice, and chased briefly by an old woman wielding a goose. You delivered the scroll with the precision of someone trying to end the conversation before it begins. Then he said, "Wait, that word again? The most dangerous one in your profession. It never means a chair and wine. It means time is about to do something rude to you." He led you around the side of the villa, Past rows of grapes that had clearly stopped trying. Past a fountain that now functions only as a bird bath for animals with low self-esteem. To a door, wooden, thick, untrustworthy. He said, "We found something. It smells strange." Of course it does. You are ushered into a room that hasn't seen sunlight since the Republic was a novelty. The air is stale. The walls lined with shelves, scrolls, hundreds of them. Some neatly rolled. Others collapsed into piles like exhausted. Snakes, no one's touched this room in decades, possibly centuries. It has the unmistakable smell of paper slowly turning into confession. There's a table in the center, covered in dust, thick enough to qualify as a second floor. You brush it away and find maps.hand-drawn, smudged, annotated, and stamped faintly with the sigil of the Cursus Publicus. The Empire's official courier service. You lift one. Carefully, it cracks like the knees of an old senator forced to kneel at first. It's nonsense. A looping path through hills that no longer exist. Then you notice the margins notes written in courier script, or personal notes. Avoid shepherd at Riverbend. Talks too much. Maybe spy, or poet. Tree fallen across ravine. Climb carefully. Curse loudly. Cold spring here. Good for blisters. And wine aren't just maps, they're messages. Notes to other messengers. A whisper network scrawled into parchment. You turn to the old centurion. He shrugs. We think this was a training site. For couriers? Before the big roads were finished? You ask who found it? He says no one remembers. It was just there. A locked room behind a wall that wasn't on the original villa plans. A storm knocked the plaster down last week. Behind it, a wooden door. And behind that, this. He adds, there's one scroll you might want to see. The strange one. Of course, the strange one. It's brittle, sealed, and stained with something that refuses to identify itself. You open. It's slowly like a man trying not to let the gods notice. Inside a root. Again, hand-drawn. But this one's different. The notes are less practical, more philosophical. This bend leads nowhere, and yet it arrives. Avoid the shortcut near the fig tree. It remembers. If you walk too fast here, you'll arrive before you understand why. It's on the back, a signature. Marcus, no surname, no title. Just Marcus, you sit. Because sitting is all you can do when the world rearranges itself into a joke with teeth. This was his training map, his route, not the official one, the other path. The one that passes behind hills, through memories, into places that forget to be remembered. You leaf through the other scrolls. Some are clearly from other messengers. Some are corrections. Others are commentaries. A few are angry. Says he never slept. In the corner of the room is a locked chest. Naturally, the centurion hands you the key like it's an old debt. Found it inside a bread loaf. Don't ask. You don't. Inside, a bag of coins, small, worn thin, by fingers that clearly worried them more than spent them. A pair of sandals, folded unnaturally, and a wax tablet on it. A list, not of names, of silences. Each line begins with a place. Each entry ends with the word delivered. It takes you a moment to realize what it is. It's not a delivery log. It's a eulogy. Each message, walked into the world and left behind like a footprint no one bothered to cast in plaster. You don't speak. The centurion doesn't either. You ask to keep one of the scrolls. Just one, not the strange one. A smaller one. The one that says, you don't know how far you've come until you stop, but you can't stop. So you never know. He nods. Take it. No one else will. You leave the villa outside. The sky has turned that pale yellow color that suggests either sunset or the gods are boiling something again. You tuck the scroll into your pouch. It fits too, easily, like it was always meant to come with you. Asterisk, 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 the scroll you took feels heavier than it should, not in weight, in intent. Like it knows something about you that you haven't figured out yet. Like it's waiting for the right moment to say, ah, there you are. You don't read it on the road. Not at first. You try to be professional, detached. focused on the next delivery that lasts for about 8 minutes. Then you find a rock. You sit. You unroll the scroll. The handwriting is small, tight, the kind of script that suggests the writer was paid per word and deeply resented the person who had to read it. It begins with a route familiar enough until it is synced. Then the annotations. Start. If you meet a man named Pollux here, turn back, he tells riddles. They never end. Left fork leads to an orchard. S. Don't touch the pears. They belong to the dead. Speak the word Cinerum at the 3rd mile marker. Just in case you blink, this isn't a commentary. This is a survival guide written by someone who mistook courier work for necromancy. You keep reading. It only gets weirder. Avoid eye contact with the goats near the shrine. One of them remembers the old empire. If you feel watched in the past, you are. By whom unclear. It's possibly by your own choices. Repeat this. Phrase, if lost. The road is long and I am unpaid. It won't help, but it's true. Signed with initials LA, you don't recognize them, but the tone feels familiar. Like someone you once met while hiding from a thunderstorm beneath an abandoned grain cart. Both of you pretending you were just resting, not trapped in the same existential joke. Then you find something stranger. A list, not of names, not of roots, of passwords. Single words, some in Latin, some in Greek, a few you suspect are made up, the linguistic equivalent of a shrug. Each one labeled with a place, a time, and a mood. Derogatorum, sunrise, impatient, ostia, after rain, hopeful, Venusia, just before curfew resigned. You stare at it. It makes no sense. And yet, you understand? Exactly what it means. These were passcodes, not for doors, for couriers, for conversations. For knowing if the man who approached you at dusk was another runner or a problem pretending to be one. The combination of time, location, and emotion. The key. Because on the road, identity isn't proven with documents. It's proven by the flavor of a sigh. By how someone sets down their satchel. By whether they call the blisters new friends. Or old regrets. You remember an encounter? Years ago, a man met you on the trail. Asked where you were headed. You lied. He nodded. Then said Terracina, before noon, annoyed. You replied Aqualaire, after wine, tired. You both smiled. No further words were exchanged. Just two couriers recognizing that. Survival sometimes depends on saying the right nonsense at the right time. You hadn't thought of that in years. Now, you wonder how many of these passwords were real. How many were invented by this LA person in a fit of frustrated creativity? Some entries are especially suspect. Alba Longa, midday skeptical about sandals. Rome always deeply over it. At the bottom of the scroll, a footnote. Yes, a literal footnote. If you find this, congratulations. You are now LA by inheritance. Don't worry. It comes with no pay, no power, and no protection. Just a slight increase in paranoia. You roll the scroll up slowly. You now possess a dead man's handbook. A passport into a secret world where logic wears sandals and irony is the national currency. You continue walking as the sun begins its slow descent into dramatic lighting territory. You come upon a milestone you don't recognize. It's not part of any official route. It's wooden. It's poorly carved. Unapologetically real. It reads, "Sing if you're still alive." You don't sing, obviously, but you do hum. A little. Not because the milestone asked. It's because you want to be. Sure, you still can. Further ahead, just off the path, a crude shelter, branches, canvas, a stone circle with ash. Someone camped here recently. The embers are cold, but the silence is warm. You find a stone beside the ashes. It's been scratched. A single phrase, Venusia, just after curfew resigned. Sit, you stay for a while. Then you add your own beneath it. Here now, humming. You don't know if anyone will read it. That's not the point. The point is the message. Absurd. Cryptic. Ridiculous. Continues. Passed not by official decree, but by weary feet and hands that still bother to write. You leave the shelter. You walk into the dusk. The scroll in your pouch crackles with every step. like a map slowly unfolding itself from the inside. And somewhere, someone else is probably writing this path evening haunted, but in a manageable way. Quitting, in theory, is simple. You stop walking. You sit. Tell the next scroll it can go burn itself in a brazier filled with overdue tax forms. You rip off your satchel, toss it into a ditch, and declare to the indifferent gods, to the flies, to the frogs pretending to listen, I am done. In practice, it's harder, because the road notices, and the road does not forgive. You're walking now through a stretch of low scrubland, the sort of place where time is given up, and so have most of the bushes. The sun is neither rising nor setting. It is simply existing. Like a bureaucrat on break, the map says this leg of the journey is named via subtilis, which in your experience translates to the subtle way. Subtle in the way snake venom is subtle, or in the way someone coughs before delivering bad news. You're halfway across. Yet when you find the marker, a stone, upright, slightly tilted, courier script etched into it, not the elegant kind. The kind scratched in haste by someone muttering unpleasant things under their breath. It reads, I tried to leave. It didn't let me. You sit, because of course you do. The story floods. Back from a voice half remembered in the dark of a supply post, they called him Hadrianus Minor, not because he was related to the emperor, because he had once tried to walk away from the job. After 12 years on the road, 37 scrolls, 5 ruined pairs of sandals, 3 near-death encounters with mildly enchanted goats, he announced his retirement. No grand farewell. Just left a message nailed to a tree. I am done. If Rome still needs legs, it can borrow someone else's. He walked west, not toward any town, not toward any sea, just away. He made it 10 miles. That's when the signs started, not literal signs. Weirder than that, the path he walked twisted back toward Rome, no matter how far he went. The landscape began to repeat itself. Same tree, same rock, same crow with judgmental posture. He tried changing direction. The sun changed with him. He slept in a cave. Woke up beside a milestone that hadn't been there before, etched with a message. There's no such thing as off-duty. Screamed into the wind. The wind replied with his own voice. Eventually, he returned. Not to a post office, not to a city, to the road. They say he never accepted another scroll, but he walked. Every day, same path, same rhythm. No message. No destination. When asked, he would only say, I'm still being watched. You stand again. You don't believe all of it, of course. Only most. Because quitting is something couriers fantasize about the way prisoners dream of beaches. It sounds nice, till you realize you don't know what to do with your hands when they aren't carrying something. You keep walking. Soon you reach a small fork, not marked, not on the map. A narrow trail angles off to the right, a line so faint it barely qualifies as deliberate, carved into the nearest stone. Try it. See what happens. You don't, but you want to. Instead, you sit beside it and eat something that was once bread, then became a weapon. It's good. And is now devolved into a moral lesson. You think about Hadrianus, about the idea of trying to stop. You realize most couriers don't fear death. They fear stillness. Because stillness is where the memories get loud. When you walk, the road has the decency to muffle your thoughts. When you stop, they shout. You once heard an old courier say, you walk to forget. You carry scrolls to delay remembering. You nodded then. You nod now. After your second bite of bread regret, a man appears on the path ahead. Thin gray cloak. Satchel that looks older than Rome. He doesn't look at you. Just walks past. Quiet. Focused. Like a thought trying not to be interrupted. You recognize the rhythm of his steps. He's been walking a long time. Maybe not Hadrianus, but someone with the same. You consider calling out, but you know the rules. You don't stop a courier mid-walk. It's bad luck. It's like waking a sleepwalker or asking a senator to explain taxation. You watch him disappear into the trees, And then, as you rise again, you notice it. Another milestone, wooden, fresh, carved. With surprising neatness, it reads, "You don't quit the message. The message quits you." You laugh, not loudly, not out of joy, just the kind of laugh that says, "Yes, that tracks." You keep going. You think about quitting again. Not seriously, just enough to feel alive. Maybe one day you'll stop. Maybe one day. The road will let you, maybe one day. Rome will forget your feet. But today is not that day. Today you carry today. You are still owned by the silence, the scroll. And the joke that no one else finds funny, you walk on. The path does not applaud, but it continues. Which, in your line of work, is basically love. Asterisk, asterisk, you arrive at the outpost after 3 days of walking through terrain. So dull it begins to feel aggressive. Fields, then more fields. Then a cluster of trees so symmetrical it looks like someone planted them just to break your spirit. You pass a donkey that judges you silently for 20 straight minutes. You judge it back. Neither of you wins. At the outpost, a man greets you. Not with a smile, not with a handshake, with a sigh, the kind that suggests he's had this conversation before, and it never goes well. "You're here for the archive," he says. "You weren't, but now you are." He leads you inside a structure that is technically a building. 4 walls, a roof, and the scent of parchment slowly digesting itself. The archivist doesn't give his name. That would imply warmth, or at least human intention. Instead, he waves at a shelf and mutters, "Section G, the strange ones." Glance around. There are shelves for sections A through F, maps, routes, scrolls, records of logistics, complaints written in increasingly passionate Latin, then section G. It looks like it was added in a hurry, by someone with a weak grasp on both carpentry and reality. The scrolls here are unlabeled. Some are damp. One is humming slightly. You select the driest one and sit at a table that wobbles in a way that suggests its internal, emotional conflict. The map unrolls like it's been waiting. At first it seems normal, a courier route along the coast, a few annotations. It's nothing strange then. You spot the marginalia. This section no longer exists. Still walk it. Don't speak above a whisper here. Not because of danger, because of etiquette. If you meet yourself, ask what year it is, then run. You look up. The archivist is brewing something in a pot, possibly tea, possibly ink, says. "You're reading Gracchus's map, aren't you?" Not slowly, he continues, without making eye contact. He used to send updates. Notes. Every few months. Then he sent this one. Then nothing. You ask if Gracchus vanished. The archivist shrugs. "No. We get letters. Just not from anywhere real." Stare at the map again. There's a part labeled. Simply, the Laughing Hills. Next to it, a sketch of a face, smiling. Too many teeth. You hope it's artistic exaggeration. You ask the archivist if anyone's walked this route since. He says only one. He came back barefoot, mumbling in Etruscan, and smelling of cinnamon. We promoted him. You look closer at the path. There's a turn labeled "Don't." Seriously. It's followed by an arrow that says, "Okay, but if you must, bring plums." Humor isn't just deadpan. It's dead, buried, then exhumed for bureaucratic inspection. You wonder, was this all a joke? Some courier losing his grip and writing nonsense into official scrolls? Then you remember what courier life does to the mind. You've argued with owls. You've wept at the sight of dry socks. You once thanked a stone for being emotionally supportive. Keep reading. There's a warning near a ravine. Avoid the left path, unless you're fond of questions with no answers. There's an annotation at a well. Drop a coin. Listen closely. The echo may disagree. And in bold script, halfway through, this route lies. Walk it anyway. You ask the archivist how many maps like this exist. He opens a drawer. It wheezes like a man who's seen too much. Inside, dozens, all from couriers who got creative, he says, or prophetic, or both. You ask why they keep them? Because, he says, stirring his pot, sometimes maps don't show us the land. They show us ourselves. and that's worse. You nod, because that feels true, and also because you've reached that stage of courier. Fatigue where everything feels vaguely poetic. Before you leave, the archivist hands you a scroll. It's sealed with twine, and smells faintly of regret and rosemary. "This one's yours," he says. You ask how he knew you were coming. He says, "I didn't. The scroll did." Of course it did. Outside the road waits, the scroll is unmarked. No destination. No recipient. Just one word. Scrawled in the corner. Listen. You tuck it into your pouch. It rustles in a way that sounds like laughter, not loud. But knowing, you walk. You try not to think about the face drawn on the map. You try not to think about yourself meeting yourself. You try not to wonder what. Message would write you as the courier. The road naturally offers no answers. Just more dust. More birds. One of which seems to be watching you with disapproval again. You consider naming it Marcus. Then you walk faster, just in case it answers. Asterisk, asterisk. There's something about basements, even in a Roman villa built with marble floors. Sensible atriums, and the persistent belief that columns can solve emotional problems. The basement remains a universal truth, a space where things are. Hidden, forgotten, or carefully stored for someone else to find and regret. You're back at the Villa Rustica. The scroll you picked up from the archivist is still unopened. Not because you don't want to know what it says, but because every time you reach for the twine, it moves. Not literally. It's just enough to make you hesitate. The centurion is waiting. For you again. He looks slightly more haunted than before. The kind of man who's been sleeping poorly and blames the walls for whispering. He says, "Oh, we found something under the old granary." Of course you did. You follow him around the back of the villa, past 2 nervous goats and a boy attempting to train a chicken. The entrance is half covered by a tarp and a large ceramic amphora that appears to be full of embarrassment and dead. Spiders. He lifts the tarp. There are stairs. There are always stairs. The air shifts as you descend, dry at first. Then damp, then dry again in the way cellars do when they're trying to decide if they're storing vegetables or memories. The chamber is small, stone walls. No torch bracket, just one oil lamp, already lit. The flame flickers in the presence of your doubts. On the floor, a low box, oak locked. You glance at the centurion. He shrugs. It was already open when we got here. Not a comforting sentence. Inside the box, a single scroll. No seal, no date. My mark of sender or recipient. You pick it up. The parchment is soft with age, but still legible. You read it begins mid-thought. No greeting, no context. Just, I knew someone would find this. I just didn't think it would be you. But then, it always was going to be you. That's the problem with the road. It loops. Sometimes slowly, sometimes with teeth. You stop. The handwriting is familiar. It's yours. You read on. By the time you reach this, you'll have seen the archive. You'll have read LAS scroll. Maybe you even walked the circle. If you didn't, you will. Don't worry. The road corrects for detours. Your hands begin to shake. Not from fear. From recognition. You wrote this. Or you will. Or someone. Who once was you and no longer entirely is. You keep reading. This villa is one of the places not special. It's just old enough to remember. Below the granary, where the olive jars once sat, there was a table. A chair. A scroll pouch with 3 messages, none of which were meant to be delivered. You'll want to take them. Don't. You glance at the far side of the chamber. There they are. A pouch. A table. A chair. Exactly as written. You do not approach. The scroll continues. If you read this far, you've accepted it. You are now the thing you feared becoming. A courier with too many answers and no one to ask questions. That's the final message. The one you don't carry in your satchel, but behind your eyes. The rest of the scroll is blank. You stare. At it, you wait for more. But it doesn't continue. The silence says, that's enough. You tuck it away. Not into your satchel, into your tunic. Closer to your chest. As if to say, this one is for me. You turn to the pouch. You leave it untouched. You do not need to know what messages waited in it. You know already that they were never meant to go anywhere. Just like some thoughts. It's just like some regrets. It's just like some names. You ask the centurion. If anyone else came down here, he shakes his head. We didn't even know it was a chamber. The goats kept refusing to graze above this spot. Eventually, we got suspicious. You both nod. Respectfully, toward the goats. You leave the basement. The sun outside has not moved. Or maybe it has, but in the same direction you did. Time is no longer interested in being chronological. Back inside the villa, someone's baking something. It smells like figs and possible closure. You don't stay. You walk. You take the scroll from the archivist, the one labeled Listen. You open it. There's only one sentence. You never deliver the last message. You become it. You don't roll it back up. You let it flap in your hand as you walk, like a lazy flag. The wind picks it up, reads it with you. Approves. By nightfall, you find yourself back on an unmarked trail. No milestone, no witness. Just dirt and the soft sigh of leaves above. You sit, you eat, you rest your head on your satchel as if it might comfort you. You stare at the stars and wonder which of them are scrolls waiting to be carried. Messages from gods too tired to shout. You sleep, no dreams. Just footstep echoes. Just the road. Tracing itself again beneath your bones. Asterisk, asterisk, you've arrived at the Domus. You can tell because your sandals sink slightly into imported gravel, which means someone paid too much to make walking inconvenient. The front steps glisten, not with rain, but with the polish of servants who no longer remember what their backs feel like when upright. The columns are taller than necessary. Everything is taller than necessary. The entry hall opens like a throat. Preparing to deliver a speech, it smells of ambition. That distinct Roman blend, waxed marble, old incense, panic disguised as dignity, and fruit, but not the edible kind. The decorative kind. The kind that looks perfect, but bruises philosophically when touched. You step inside, eh? The servant eyes you with the precision of a man trained to recognize both couriers and mild threats. You nod. He nods. You do not speak. It's house, speech, his currency. You're already bankrupt. The atrium is absurd. A pool in the center reflects the painted ceiling, which features Jupiter, of course. Reclining on clouds and judging humanity, while accepting offerings that look suspiciously like your weekly rations, you are not offered a chair or a drink, or even a basic unit of warmth. You stand, damp, hungry, under a ceiling fresco that implies you should feel honored to be allowed to wait. A second servant appears. This one looks identical to the first, except angrier and carrying a small tray of disappointment. On it, a scroll. Small, thick parchment, tied with a ribbon that has been tied too many times. You're not handed the scroll. You're instructed to carry it with particular care. You ask who it's for. The servant flinches. We don't say the name. Just deliver it to the east wing of the city. No, of the house. You are not in a house. You're in an empire that believes in walls. You follow. The hallways multiply. Columns, arches, busts of men with expressions like they've never apologized for anything. The further in you go, the quieter it gets. It's not peaceful, strategic. This wing is different. Less decorated. More cautious. Fewer servants. Fewer servants. Fewer exits. You knock. The door opens, slowly. The man inside does not stand. He waves at a chair you suspect no one has ever sat in comfortably. You remain standing. He looks at you like someone inspecting a crack in their villa foundation. Annoyed, but resigned. He says nothing. You hand him the scroll. He doesn't open. He just stares at it. Like it might explode or worse, contain a request. You try to leave. He stops you. What do you know about the message? He asks. Your eyebrows make a small decision on your behalf. Nothing. Shrugged. He nods. Not approval. Just acknowledgement. Of your limitations, then, in a tone designed to make you feel like a misplaced spoon, he says. They never used to ask. Couriers, you handed over the message, and that was it. Now they look. You say nothing because you've looked. You've opened things. Read things. Felt things. You know how many messages say urgent and then contain a complaint about fig shipments? You know how many say private and are love letters to people whose names are clearly placeholders? You've also seen the others. The scrolls with blood smudges. The ones where the wax seal cracked on its own. The ones that whispered, "The man stands now, tall, tired, not old, but aged like paper that's been kept in sunlight too long." He looks you over. "You'll forget this house," says. You nod. "You'll forget my name." You nod again. "You'll forget that message." You don't nod, he notices. Then he smiles, not kindly, just knowingly. "You're too good at remembering, courier. That's going to be your problem. You exit the room with your spine, too. Straight. It's a mistake. Because down the hallway, a woman appears. She's holding a tray of actual fruit. This time, real, juicy, possibly sincere. She offers it quietly. You take a fig. It's ripe. You regret it immediately. Not because of the taste, because the moment you bite into it. The woman says, "Now you're part of the deal." You blink. Chew. Swallow. The fig was delicious. It's also ruined now. She's gone. There was no exit. But she's gone. You don't mention it. Back in the atrium, the servants are gone. The pool is still, too still. The fresco of Jupiter above seems to have changed slightly. His eyes are open now. You do not look. Up again. You walk out. You do not look behind. You pass the fruit tray again. The figs are fake again. Or were always fake or a neither at the gate. The first servant is back. Says nothing. You say nothing. The message has been delivered. Or it hasn't, but something certainly has. You walk away, there from the Domus, and you tell yourself it's over. Which in courier terms always means it's not. Or's son is watching you. You should go now, he says. The house doesn't like people finding this room, and it remembers. We ask how to exit. He smiles, stands, and presses another mosaic, this one of a fish frowning at a grape. The wall slides open behind you, he says. Tell no one. You don't reply. Because what would you say? Step back into the corridor. The wall seals behind you. You are alone again. Back in the hallway, the villa is quiet. The servants are gone. The fruit is back to being ornamental and deeply untrustworthy. You find the latrine. It is worse than expected. You leave quickly. Outside, the air is cooler now. Like the villa finally exhaled something it had been holding for decades. You walk away. You carry no new message. And yet, you feel heavier. Asterisk, 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 you weren't invited to dinner. That's important. You were summoned. There's a difference. An invitation suggests someone wants your company. A summons implies you have no say in the matter, and that refusing might result in exile, punishment. Or worse, polite. Disapproval delivered through a servant holding a scroll with your name spelled wrong. The senator's servant finds you by the gate. Your mid-step, already half gone. The sunset just beginning to soften the air into something breathable. Dominus would like to dine with you. The servant says, the way a man might say you have been selected for minor, divine inconvenience. You consider declining? But couriers are like knives. No one expects them to argue. Only to cut through things and disappear. You're led back into the villa, this time through a side entrance. Less grand, more real. You pass a kitchen where a slave is threatening a pot into boiling. Another is arguing with a pigeon. Then you're in the triclinium. The dining room, a long couch, hugs a low table. Everything is draped in silks that look expensive and uncomfortable. Candles flicker along the walls, too many to be useful, just enough to make the shadows suspicious. The senator sits at one end of the couch, reclined, relaxed in the way only powerful men are, the kind of relaxation that comes from knowing. The taxes are other people's problem. He gestures to a place near him. You perch. You do not recline. Your body doesn't trust the furniture. Food arrives. Of course it does. Bread that flakes like ancient scrolls. Fish so delicate it might apologize if touched. Grapes that look like they were painted and forgot. To rot, you are handed a cup. It smells of wine And something else, memory, maybe. You sip. The senator watches. You've been here a long time, he says. You nod. Long enough to see things you shouldn't. You do not nod again. That would be too honest, he laughs. It's a small, round sound, polished, used often. I envy your kind, he says. You see the empire? Honestly. From the ground. It's not through meetings and maps. You resist the urge to say yes. We also see the blisters, the dirt, and the bits of Rome no one bothers to paint on walls. Instead, you nod. He sips his wine then, as if casually tell me, did you speak to my son? You do not flinch. You do not answer. You chew your bread, which now tastes like diplomacy. He watches you, eyes calm, voice softer. He has a tendency to collect things, words, ideas, dangerous ones. You finish chewing slowly, carefully, like you're worried the senator might ask for the bread back and check for seditious flavor. He leans closer. I sent you a scroll earlier today. You nod. I didn't write it. You blink, it came. From my father's study. Locked for years. When we opened it, it was addressed to someone like you. A courier who knew too much and still chose to walk. You ask why he gave it to you. Because you've already walked farther than most. And because he pauses, it's better to hand someone a burden than to carry it yourself. You ask what the message meant. He smiles. But the smile is wrong. Like a mask, slightly misaligned. I don't know, he says, or I don't want to. He leans back, tears off a piece of fish with his fingers. Let me ask you something. You nod. Again, what do you think Rome is? You open your mouth, he stops you. No, he says, not the city. Not the buildings or the senators or the legions. Rome. He waits. You think? You say quietly, movement. He blinks. You continue. It travels. It sends itself. It's in the scrolls and the messages. It exists wherever someone is carrying something they didn't write to someone who expects too much. The senator stares. Then he laughs. Not the polished kind. The real kind. It's a surprised kind. Gods, he says. You sound like my son. You say nothing. Because he's wrong. You sound like a courier who has walked too long, read too many scrolls, and accidentally become a philosopher. Dinner ends not with dessert, but with a question. He says, would you stay here? It's work in the villa or run the archive. You'd have a room, a bed, clean sandals, no more blisters. You want to say yes? You say no. He doesn't ask why, because he already knows. Because people like you don't retire. They just vanish. He nods slowly. I won't summon you again. You nod back. Grateful, regretful, you leave the villa again. This time no servant watches. No fig tempts you. No door creaks a final warning. You walk into the dark, not because you want to, because it's the only direction you still trust. You know it's not for you the moment you touch it. It's in your satchel. You didn't put it there. That's not unusual. Things arrive. Scrolls, notes, messages, folded like secrets, and tucked into your belongings by hands you never saw.
Oh.
You learn not to be surprised by this. You've also learned that pretending not to notice doesn't work. This scroll is wrapped in plain linen. The fabric smells faintly of smoke, oil, and something older. The scent of things that were buried not to be preserved, to be forgotten. You sit beneath a half-dead tree, the kind that offers shade mostly out of spite. You unwrap the scroll. No seal, no ribbon, just a curl of parchment and the unmistakable hesitation of someone who wrote something they regretted before the ink even dried. The handwriting is yours again, only older, slower. Every letter shaped like a memory trying to hold its posture. The first line reads, "You're not supposed to read this." You pause. Not out of guilt. Just out of habit, you continue. You're only supposed to carry it. Deliver it to someone who won't open it either. That's the game, isn't it? We pass burdens like fruit we know is rotting. You shift slightly. The parchment crackles. The next part isn't addressed to anyone. Not directly. I used to think messages were about distance, about urgency. But it's always been about delay. Rome doesn't want the truth fast. It wants it slow. Digested. decomposed. It's decor you remember the senator's Domus, the fake fruit, the questions that weren't questions. I tried to stop walking. You did too. We both came back. That line stings, because it's not wrong. I found something. Under the villa. Not just messages. Not just warnings. A place. A room. A script etched into the stone. Not Latin. Not Greek. Courier code, maybe. Maybe something older. It said, "Message complete," when no one understands it. You look around. The tree leans slightly, as if trying to eavesdrop. You keep reading. I think we're not couriers anymore. I think we're the message. You stop, because that's the line that won't leave. You are the message, not the words, not the scroll. You, the walker, the bruises, the memory of things that weren't supposed to survive. You turn to the last. Lines, they're written more hastily, as if time ran out. Courage. If you ever read this, burn it. Not because it's dangerous, because it's true. And Rome cannot carry the truth, can only file it. You roll the scroll slowly, you don't burn it. Not yet, you tuck it beneath a stone, not to hide it, to keep it close. You don't want to carry it anymore. But you also don't want it to be alone. You stand. You resume walking, because that's the answer to everything now. Movement. Forward motion as a form of forgetting. Later that evening, you pass a small hill. Someone scratched courier script into the dirt. When nearly erased it, it says, "Memory is a detour." You don't offer answers. He offers stale. Bread, water, and a place near the goats. You thank him with silence and coin. One more than necessary, you lie down. You close your eyes. You dream of scrolls that whisper. Of ink that stains backwards. Of messages written by people who never lived, but somehow remember you. You wake before dawn. Of course you do. You pack. You hesitate. You glance toward, at the scroll under the stone. It's still there. You leave it, maybe. Someone else will find it. Maybe no one will. Maybe that's what the message. Carried asterisk, asterisk, you've delivered the last scroll. Maybe it's hard to be sure. The satchel is empty, or says it is. But it sags in a way that suggests otherwise. Like a dog that ate something it shouldn't and is now pretending not to explode, you open it, nothing inside. No scroll, no wax seal, no accidental fig. Still, it feels heavier than ever. That's Rome for you, full of things you can't see but are required to carry anyway. You keep walking. You should feel free now, finished. Light, instead. Your feet hurt worse. Your shoulders slump deeper. You've been ignoring since you took this job. It started sending letters to your knees, asking for structural updates. This is the part no one prepares you for. The part after. After the final delivery, when there are no orders and yet your legs keep moving, because stopping feels wrong, because stopping feels like you're trying to retire, and Rome doesn't like retirement. It likes silence. Preferably the permanent kind. The road ahead is flatter than dignity after a failed Senate speech. The stones are neat, too neat, like they've been arranged by someone who's never walked in sandals and thinks symmetry is comforting. You pass a milestone. It reads ROME 0 miles, which is odd. But it feels like the milestone just shrugged back. You keep walking. The sun is low. Not setting, just sulking. There's a fountain ahead. The kind meant for travelers. It's dry. Of course it is. But someone's left a clay cup on the edge. You pick it up. There's a note tied to the handle. Do not drink. Remembers. You don't know what that means. You don't want to. You put the cup back. A bird watches you from a branch. Its expression is that of a bureaucrat. On lunch break, you nod at it. It doesn't nod back. This is fine. You pass a tree with a carving on the trunk. Courier script slightly. Crooked, don't stop yet. You're almost at the part where nothing makes sense. You stop. Immediately. Because that's the kind of message that deserves at least a pause. You look around, no buildings, no voices, no landmarks, only the quiet. buzz of insects, and the slight sound of your own disbelief aging rapidly. You start walking again, slowly. The kind of slow that implies you're reconsidering all your decisions, especially the one where you agreed to deliver scrolls for a living in exchange for sandals and half a loaf of shame. Eventually, you reach a fork. One road curves to the left, lined with cypress trees and polite silence. The other veers right into what appears to be a canyon full of fog and metaphor. You sigh. You choose the canyon because you're you, and you've accepted that now. The fog doesn't part. It lingers. It's like guilt. The rocks beneath your feet are damp, and not in a friendly way. The way that says, someone cried here, and the earth never quite forgave them. Scroll pinned to a tree ahead. You did not put it there. It is tied with red string. Not waxed, not sealed. You take it down, unroll it. It says, final message, delivered to you from also you content. You re-roll it. You place it back where you found it. The wind shifts. The canyon echoes softly. Not your footsteps. But something older. Footsteps not taken. Roots never walked. Messages never delivered. You walk faster. A mile later, another milestone. No text. Just an indentation. Like someone pressed their head against it for a while, then walked away forever. You find a small clearing, you sit. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because your body has begun to unionize. You unlace your sandals. Your feet look like they've been drafted into 5 wars and lost all of them to weather conditions. You rub them gently, not lovingly. It's just enough to remind them they still exist. Then you hear it. A whisper, not close. Just steady. It's saying your name, not your real name, your courier name, the one you stopped using because you forgot where it started. The whisper fades. Of course it does. You eat something. It was once bread, now it's more. Symbolic. Crunches like guilt and tastes like the past. You lie back. You watch the stars appear. They blink into being one by one. Like scrolls unfurling across the sky. You name them. One is urgent message. That wasn't one, is wrong address, wrong life. One is you slept outside again. Congratulations. You smile. The sky doesn't smile back, but it doesn't need to. You sleep eventually. Just before you drift off, you think maybe the Empire was never a place. Maybe it was just an idea that needed legs. And now, those legs are yours. Asterisk, asterisk, and now. The scroll has been delivered even if no one asked for it. Your feet have stopped, not because the journey ended, but because the night finally caught up. The satchel rests beside you, empty in the way that still manages to feel full. Somewhere, Rome continues whispering like a city that never learned how to be quiet. Thank you for staying until the end. You've walked far even while lying down. There will be more roads, more messages. And now as you lie there, you know the loop will wait once more for you, asterisk, asterisk.